the technology that we provided, whether it was the actual one-to-one or hotspots and so on. Now, in addition to that, there is a primary focus for these funds to be utilized as direct services to students to impact and improve the academic learning losses that are being seen throughout the entire nation, of course. And so what we need to do is engage our community in some very thoughtful conversations. This is one of those where you would want to rush to say, here's where we're going to spend all the dollars. And it's really one where we have to truly embrace that statement of go slow to go fast, because what we don't want to do is to just see that here's some dollars, how do we spend it? We need to engage our stakeholders, and we need to make sure that students are part of that conversation, including, of course, teachers, campus leaders, civic leaders, families, parents. There's a variety of stakeholders, and we have a lot of forums in which to do that. But we really don't know exactly how we want to spend that, because we want to hear from our stakeholders. Now, there are guidelines, of course, that have been connected with these. So it's not like everything is available, but we want to at least provide, here is what the rules, if you will, of engagement for these funds are, and then listen to our community members.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list is KXAN. Alex?
Dr. Elizalde, I'm wondering if you could tell me what it has been like to work with the state and to work with state leadership and the TEA to get these funds into the hands of school districts and into AISD. Can you candidly tell me what it's been like for you and what communication levels have been like?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's probably been similar to how maybe some of our community members feel when they're trying to get something that they really think they need from us, and maybe we don't appear as responsive as we need to be. So I certainly don't want to ever second guess, because it's easy to say this is what I would do if I were in that position. On the other hand, it has hindered us without a doubt, and it has added some frustration, because that frustration, of course, cascades all the way down to our students and our parents, right? And so not being able to articulate why 48 other states in our nation had access to these dollars and we did not, in many instances, it's kind of hard to convince people, like, well, how come you all aren't doing what so-and-so in New Mexico is doing? So, I would characterize it as frustrating, to say the least.
And then the governor has said that he's able to release 2/3 of the pot of money that's there, leaving the final third, approximately $5.5 billion or so, waiting on further guidance. And so obviously $5.5 billion is nothing to scoff at, but at the same time, a lot of money is going to pour down into districts from this 11.2 billion. So I guess my question is, do you feel satisfied with what you're being given right now, or do you feel like more pushing needs to continue to still get that final third and get it quickly?
Well, no public educator has ever said we've received enough money, and I certainly won't be the first. There is always a need for us to fund. There are so many things that we are not able to do in our schools that we know that our students, teachers, leaders, families, parents really need. So you're never going to hear me say we don't need more. And it's not want. It's not we want more. We need more. But that's true about our entire funding system. So, but are we glad we got this money? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you just don't, we got to take what we have and focus on what we do with what we have. It's really important that we not get caught up in what else we think we should be owed, and instead ensure that we utilize what we do have to meet our student needs.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our list is Spectrum News. Nikki?
Hello, Superintendent Elizalde. So I know you said that the district is going to be very intentional in how you plan on spending this money, but I'm curious whether if you have an idea of how much of the funds will be used to reimburse costs, money already spent on technology and support during the pandemic versus how much might be available for additional resources for teachers, perhaps personnel, recruitment and retention. I know the district lost some teachers this year due to the pandemic. Are teachers on your mind when it comes to how you're going to spend this money?
Certainly, teachers are always on our mind because they are, after all, truly the educational program rests in the talents of our teachers. And we're very fortunate to have the talent pool that we do here in Austin ISD. That being said, there are some strings that come with these dollars. And so, for instance, they really can't be used for salaries. These are one-time funds. And so you can imagine that and there are actually expectations about, what equitable distribution looks like. And so, for instance, giving raises across the board would not fit with an equity standard of what we're being told in writing how we can and can't utilize the funds. However, we definitely know that a minimum of 20% of these dollars need to be spent on direct services to students to address the academic learning loss. That is the main overarching umbrella, which is why they're even putting minimums. Now, we've spent approximately somewhere between 50 and 55 million on COVID-related costs, as I stated earlier. So we would certainly be looking to see if all of those costs would be one area that we could immediately reimburse ourselves for some of those costs. It's interesting because we have to look at this. I think that's why I started with, we really need to be intentional and go slow to go fast. We want to see, how do you maximize the utilization of these dollars rather than, here are the dollars, here are the rules, here's how we spend it. How does it fit into our overarching budgeting strategy so that this becomes more than just, yes, it's one-time money, but how do we ensure that we can utilize it to continue to meet the needs of our student and be able to build a healthy budget in the future. So it's an overarching, how do we incorporate this within our overall financial planning?
Gotcha, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind telling me, do you have an idea of exactly how much money the district will be getting from the state and how soon that might be in the purses for the district?
Yeah, the one about when we'll actually get it, I don't have off the top of my head right now. It is approximately 150 million that looks like would be coming to Austin. It's a little different than what we were originally thinking, not by much, but we still haven't even been able to confirm why is it off by about 10 million. So we're still even trying to figure that out. But to be fair and to answer the question directly, it's approximately 150 million. And we hope we're going to get it quickly. The team is actually filling out those forms right now as we speak so that we can access those dollars as quickly as possible.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Austin Maria Mendez.
Hi, thanks for having this call. I had a question about what the process will look like for laying out, how the district intends to use these funds, and I know federal guidelines require public input. So I was wondering if you have any more details as to what that may look like and the timeline for individuals to provide input.
Sure. So, of course, we just got notified yesterday. So we are creating a timeline, but we're very fortunate that we've already created a lot of community engagement advisory committees, and we've even begun having community conversations with our public. And so we're going to continue to align all of the different venues that we already have available to us to connect with our stakeholders and engage the stakeholders. And I think that is one of the primary reasons, Maria, that it's as much as it's like, here's how we're going to spend the money, which is what I think sometimes people want to hear us say. The truth is, I don't want to rush to here's how we're going to spend the money, because we need to really be intentional in listening and learning before we launch how we're going to utilize these funds. I know that, for instance, I've heard a lot, and it is allowable, a focus on mental health services. So what would that look like? But I don't want to just, because I've heard that anecdotally, then make that decision that that's the direction we're going to go. So we're going to be very intentional about these stakeholder groups and thinking deeply about who's at the table. And it's also important that at every single group, we begin with an equity lens. We need to be asking ourselves the question, students who have been affected the most, how are we reaching their needs? So starting with students with special needs, to students of lower income, to students of color. Those are the students that we really need to begin to address, because we know while there's been academic learning loss and effect on mental health, those populations, because they have always suffered from not having access to all of those resources, are groups of students we need to call out. If we really say we're about equity, now is our time to make sure that we're focused on those students.
Yeah, thank you. And as a follow-up, I know that these funds are one-time funds and they have to be spent by September of 2024, according to the TA. But y'all are also working on your budget right now. So I guess could you tell me a little bit more if you know if you'll be factoring these funds into the budget for the upcoming year, or how you're thinking about that right now? I know it's still early though.
No, but certainly the same question I just asked our team earlier today after, of course, we had gotten the notification, and I've met with our financial team. We really don't want to incorporate it directly into our budget right now, because it will put us in this rush for how are we going to utilize the money. So there's a reason why, while it's one time, they've given us an amount of time to spend it. And so while, as you correctly stated, we have until 2024, we have to encumber it by 2023. So we do have to have a plan and encumber those costs by the time we get to the 2023 school year, but we can spend it through the 2020 till the end of that school year into 2024. So I just want to make sure that what we couldn't do is not have a plan for those funds and then kind of decide along the way during that school year. So to try to rush to put it into our budget, season planning right now would put us back into that space where I think I would be leading us into rushing on what is the best use of this funds rather than engaging our community. And so we just have to resist. Trust me, it's hard for me. I want to be able to just say, here, let's do this and let's do that. We really need it to reflect the values and the commitments of our school board and our community members. So it's going to take us some time. There is no thought right now to rush to put it into our budget cycle for this coming next budget season.
Okay, thank you so much.
From KView. KVUE. Okay. Fox 7 News. Fox. Okay. KLBJ AM Radio, John.
Howdy, y'all. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Oh, score. Well, most of my questions were already answered, so I'm trying to shoot from the hip here.
You don't have to. We're really good.
I'm not, though. I'm still a little confused on this process that you're trying to go forward with in how to allocate the funds, and you're using basically comes down to public comment.
That's correct. But that's a requirement. Like, it's part of the way in which ESSER was designed. You must have a system for engaging stakeholders. Otherwise, they won't actually even allow you to utilize the funds.
Okay, so my question would be, when do you expect those to start up, and how do you hope to keep things equitable, since that's also part of this, or part of the requirements, I believe?
Yeah, certainly. That's exactly why I think we're fortunate that we have already created some equity advisory committees to begin with, and have a lot of other advisory committees that are in existence. And so those will be the ones we will immediately be able to start with. But we want to be, we got to bring our team together first to talk about what will that look like. So what kinds of questions do we need to ask to ensure that we're meeting not just the letter of the law, but what the intent is. And the intent is to make sure that again, we are not individually making decisions about this type of money, but rather that we are listening to our community, because this is all due to the pandemic. And so there are issues that have occurred that maybe we're not connected to because they may not have affected us in that way. And so using both the equity lens along with stakeholder engagement. Now, input does not equate to authority, so it doesn't mean we're not going to take a vote, we're not going to, but we definitely want to take note of what we hear as the common themes. It's much more of a qualitative engagement than it would be a quantitative one. Does that help?
Yes. When do you think these meetings would actually, these public meetings would actually take place, though?
Yeah, so I'm thinking within the next 2 weeks, our team will come together to develop what that process will look like so that it will be equitable to all of the groups. And so I would say within about 2 to 3 weeks, you will begin to hear that the groups that already exist will begin having those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I believe we have one more before we do the Spanish interview. Community impact, Nick.
Hi, thank you guys so much. Just one question, because you've answered a lot of the questions I had already. But you had mentioned earlier that the district has spent somewhere around about 55 million already on COVID-related costs, and some of this money would clearly go to that. But looking kind of ahead, what are some of the biggest items that you and the district anticipate having to spend that are related to COVID that are still, I guess, yet to come?
Well, gosh, that's also one of those futuristic kind of questions that without knowing exactly, so much has changed even when we thought something was going to go in one direction and then we had to pivot. But I would say maintaining the continuity with some of the technology is going to be something, you know, how do we replace what we've put out there, what we did distribute, how much of it, you know, we were not on a schedule to have, you know, typically you would have a technology rollout where you would have had, well, here's a third, and then we have every year you're replacing a third of your technology so that all your technology is not older than 3 years. Our technology officer is just now working on, because we distributed and invested in technology across the board. So how do you ensure that we've got the age of all of the technology we have and create that eventual 3-year cycle? The other is going to be, I think we're going to need to really think about the kind of professional development and extended time and extended enrichment activities for students that are going to require huge amounts of investment. Again, focusing on all students, but there has to be a laser focus on students that the research says have been affected more so by the pandemic than others. So there could be some huge investments in some summer enrichment programs to provide students opportunities where something that you might have to pay for, a really rich summer activity that we would be able to provide for students, particularly, again, those students that we know have been greatly affected. Mental health supports, I think, are going to be another area where large amounts of dollars of investment will need to be ongoing. Those are just a couple off the top of my head, but our team really needs to do what I would say is a very prioritized needs assessment. We really need to look at our data, both quantitative and qualitative, and create a true plan that would be responsive, that would be focused on, again, student outcomes, direct services to students, because at the end, this really needs to be a student-centered needs assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending. We're going to do a Spanish interview with Telemundo and Univision. Do we have Melanie?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, and someone from Univision?
Yes, I'm still here too.
Okay, very good. Okay, Superintendent.
Buenas tardes. Estamos agradecidos que el gobernador y la agencia de TEA escucharon nuestro llamado para distribuir los fondos de ayuda COVID-19 que el Congreso asignó específicamente para las escuelas públicas. Esta es una muy bien noticia para los estudiantes de Austin y será de gran ayuda para cumplir con nuestra misión de educar a todos los niños todos los días.
Gracias. Melanie, do you have some questions too?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually just ask the same questions, but if you could reply in Spanish for Telemundo, who will be using this interview. What impact has the state withholding these funds had on teachers and students to date?
Un gran impacto ha sido en la planificación para satisfacer las necesidades de los estudiantes, ya que no sabemos si o cuándo íbamos a recibir los fondos y ahora han llegado, pero ahora no tenemos el mismo tiempo para hacer los planes para tener servicios para los alumnos. Aunque ahora sí vamos a comenzar, pero sí nos hemos tardado. Mientras otros estados ya tenían estos fondos, nosotros estábamos esperando.
Thank you. And then how will these funds specifically be used or could be used? I know no decision has been made yet, but how could they be used to help students who are struggling with learning gaps because of the pandemic?
La prioridad será satisfacer las necesidades de los estudiantes para mejorar el aprendizaje académico perdido y apoyar a su salud mental. Vamos a tener que estudiar la información que tenemos para hacer programas específicamente para los estudiantes que necesitan el apoyo más que otros. Gracias.
Thank you.
Okay, and Univision.
I guess my question is gonna be, if you could just go over how much money the district is expected to receive and what's the time period that you guys will have to spend this money? I just want the information in Spanish.
Esperamos recibir casi 150 millones de dólares y vamos a tener tiempo hasta el septiembre de 2024. Tenemos que tener el plan para cómo vamos a usar el dinero antes de comenzar el año escolar de 2023, pero podemos usar el dinero hasta el septiembre 2024. Gracias.
Can you go over how you guys have already spent $50 million with PPEs and all that in Spanish?
Certainly. Hasta este momento el distrito ya ha pagado alrededor de 55 millones de dólares de gastos relacionados con la COVID-19, como en tecnología, equipo de protección personal o el PPE, plexiglas y en sistemas de aire.
Perfect. Now, can you also go over the committee and how you guys will be meeting or holding these hearings? That way, and would this be open to the public? I didn't get that in English, so if you're able to say it in Spanish.
Es importante comunicarnos con el público. Estaremos colaborando con la comunidad en el público por medio de una variedad de foros para lograr la participación de las partes interesadas. Esto significa que debemos resistir la presión de apresurarnos en crear un plan y, en lugar de eso, ir más despacio para hacerlo mejor. Necesitamos garantizar que tenemos una variedad en la participación comunitaria, incluyendo a los estudiantes, los maestros, las familias, los líderes escolares, los miembros de la mesa directiva, los socios cívicos, etc. Además, debemos continuar utilizando nuestro enfoque en equidad y en las necesidades de los estudiantes para recolectar datos que incluyen las condiciones actuales para identificar de manera estratégica las prioridades de nuestros estudiantes. Debemos alinearnos a las necesidades de nuestros estudiantes y los resultados en lugar de volver a empezar de nuestro. Debemos definir nuestras prioridades sobre las inversiones.
Perfect. Now, can you go over what are some of the things that you mentioned that there are some strings that come with these dollars that they just can't be used for salaries or to give raises? That wouldn't be fit. Can you say that in Spanish?
Estos fondos tienen unos requerimientos, por ejemplo, no se pueden poner en salarios para todos los miembros del equipo. Tenemos que tener un plan que está enfocado en los alumnos, en los estudiantes, y sí podemos usar dinero en diferente manera, pero todas las decisiones de los fondos tienen que estar enfocados en los estudiantes.
My final question, mental health. When we talk about mental health, we know that's a taboo topic within the Hispanic community. We also know that from keeping the kids at home, going through virtual classes, that has affected them in various ways. How would you overcome the hurdle of having to talk to Hispanic parents about mental health issues and getting their kids help?
Pienso que es importante comunicar y hablar sobre la salud mental usando nosotros como ejemplos. Es importante que también el proceso necesita estar entre la clase de educación. O sea, no siempre tiene que ser algo separado. Tenemos que tener servicios para una variedad de necesidades. Todos no necesitan un consejero uno a uno. Unos a lo mejor sí, pero otros a lo mejor en la manera en que tenemos la salud mental en la frente de hacer los planes de cómo estamos enseñando en clase, podemos tener eso parte de la instrucción. Creo que de esa manera vamos a poder a tocar a todos los alumnos, pero con los padres que teman esa conversación, es importante crear relaciones para poder tener esas conversaciones uno a uno con los padres. Necesitamos hacerlos individuales. Entonces queremos tener esas relaciones porque es importante tener la conversación para cambiar la mente de lo que a unos piensan de la salud mental.
Perfect. Thank you. You answered all my questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank you all. Gracias. Adiós.
Bye.